In this video series, we're going to take a look at doing a real basic mix on a straightforward sort of a soft rock, sort of indie rock song. I've got a bunch of tracks loaded in here. I've barely even listened to this. It's basically brand new to me. I've done nothing but just load the original multi-tracks in, and we're going to talk about, as I go, how I like to mix. I've set some rules for myself to keep it simple. I've got some levels work to do, some panning work to do. We're only going to use EQ and compression on the tracks. We'll use reverb and delay only for spatial effects, and then we'll put some processing on the master fader as well. This will be broken up into episodes. So this is going to be a full mix, just broken up into short episodes. I've got everything loaded in here, and my first job for me is actually just to visually sort of organize this. I've made a whole video about this, about how I like to do it, but I'm just going to go ahead and jump right in. The first thing here is I'm just going to color all of my tracks based on what they are. So it looks like we've got drums up to here. And the colors I use, it just kind of depends on the session. I'll keep bass that color. We'll go to electric guitar. I don't like to make the same colors for every single track. I just kind of go with what I want to do that day. You can see we've got a bunch of electric guitars here, so these are probably going to be broken up into sort of like sub-colors. Acoustic guitar. Cello. We've got a couple different cello things going on. Piano. Okay, and we've got some synths. And then the vocals. The only thing I guess I do pretty regularly is I always make the vocals purple color. I've been doing that for years. So that's sort of my first pass at doing the color breakdown, and then I'm going to go through again, and at this point it's actually time to sort of look and listen to see what's going on and how these are broken apart even further. The drums are going to all stay the same. I'm going to use this up here to make my regions look a little bit bigger so I can see more of what's happening. So it looks like, okay, so these are a pair and they're labeled as such too. And these are all the same. These are a pair. Okay, I think for now, in terms of color, all I'm going to do is change these a little bit, because that one looks very different than the rest of them. The rest of these are, yeah, so I'm just looking, organizing, so it looks like these, if I take these 5 tracks, 6 tracks, that pretty much covers the electric guitars for the whole song, and then they have additions here. If I could be wrong about how that's organized, but I'm just going based on what it looks like to start with. And I think I'm going to leave it like this for now, because these look like more minor additions. Yeah, okay. Now we got acoustic guitar, cello. These can be maybe 2 different colors that are very similar. That means acoustic guitar has to change. That works. Piano's fine, synth's fine, and the lead vocal will be different than everything of the other vocals. Okay, so again, I haven't even listened to this. Now, I might listen to it, depending, if I'm doing this for a client, I probably would listen to it how it is, but, there's a lot of different schools of thought about that. Because there's zero mix on this, a lot of times during the tracking process, there might have been a board mix or something like that, and these, these guitars or this might be way, way louder than the artist wants them, like just completely way louder than everything else possibly. And in a way, you can almost taint your ears a little bit listening beforehand, because you might think that, like, this is the lead guitar or this is the big lead guitar of the song, and it really isn't. The artist might have meant it as sort of a backing thing. So what I like to do is I like to organize like this color wise, and then I will go through and organize level wise, and I use mostly the mix track for that, and I'll sort of add EQ and compression correctively as I go. I also will often redo the icons over here. And so I think I'm going to forego that for this video just because it's a little bit boring to watch. Yeah, I will often redo all these icons over here. Maybe I'll kind of do it as we go. But yeah, so I'm going to start with the drums here, and just the goal, like I said, is just to get things sort of level matched so we can hear everything and then go from there. So I've gotten criticisms before. Sometimes I'll jump into a mix and people say, well, you haven't even listened to it. It's like, well, I'm not even really mixing it. I'm just sort of organizing as I listen. So rather to listen to the whole thing, start to finish without knowing, what's what, I like to sort of get things organized, and then I do a lot of listening as I go once things are organized. So yeah, so let's look at the kicks here. Looks like there's 3 of them. Okay. So this is probably a big build section, and you can also see the kick is not throughout the whole song. So just really, really simply, we're going to take the kick, we're going to bring it down 10 dB. So we have a lot of headroom to work with. Headroom would be everything above 10 dB. And then let's see what the snare is doing. See, I'm not spending a lot of time just mixing these 3 together, just treating them all as one, and then we'll just go right to the snare during that. There's a snare on the bottom too, snare top and snare bottom. So basically take the 3 kicks, take the 2 snares, and mix them in. There's going to be a lot of snare in the overheads as well. And as I'm doing mixing, I use my ears, of course, but I also use the fact that I've got numbers here, and I like to set things in 0.5 increments. So either 0.0 or 0.5, if I can. If not, then I put it where I want it. But typically 0.0 to 0.5 is where I like to put things. So 7.0, 6.5, 7.5, whatever. And the reason I do that is because as I'm looking at my mix, it's really easy for me to tell if I might have accidentally moved something, because if a level is set to this, it's unlikely that I would have put it there. It's probably an accident. So I probably meant either -5 or 4.5. It's just a habit that I've gotten into over the years. If these numbers are here, I like to actually use them. It's also really helpful if you're trying to say, what does it sound like 2 dB louder? You don't have to do weird math between sometimes it gets confusing when you've been mixing for a long time. Adding 2 dB to -7.2 dB it gets difficult. Sometimes, I know it sounds simple, but it can be a little bit overwhelming sometimes. So I like to just use 0.0 or 0.5. So there's the snares. Got this hi-hat track. So I soloed that in, I didn't hear it, so I'm going to turn all these off and see what it's doing. So it's doing nothing there. Maybe go to other areas of the song, it's not really doing anything. Here it's doing something. So this hi-hat is the first one I'm going to put an effect on. I'm just going to put an EQ on it and make sure we get rid of all the low end. It's really we care about this up there. Okay. And we got this ride track, which is probably going to be mostly snare sounds, overheads. So the ride track I'm just going to pull out for now. Unless I hear ride later on, I'll add it in. The overheads, we're just going to pull out a little bit of the low end, just to make sure it sounds nice and clean. And that will just add some color to the whole sound. we go. And you see how important that headroom is. Now that I've turned the kick down, I have plenty of room. If I want more hi-hat, I can turn it up. What we want to avoid, or what I like to avoid, is going anything over 0.0, because I don't want to add gain on the fader. I only want to add gain with effects or things like that. I don't want to actually use the fader to boost this level. I want to keep everything at 0 or below. This is the way I like to work. So next one looks like